In 2011, a game that you love came out with an accessory. I want to know if you had it. Did you ever play the game Pokemon Heart Gold or Soul Silver on the DS?
I didn't originally. I did not pick it up at launch. That was I was a teenager, and I was trying to play some more edgy games.
Sure.
And not that I had completely given up on Pokemon at that point.
Right.
But like I did not buy that day and date and picked it up a lot. I mean, maybe 10 years later.
Okay.
But I know you're talking about the Pokewalker.
The Pokewalker.
I never had one.
Okay, so I just found out this was a thing, right? Good idea. I think it was probably like partial. Okay, so the Pokewalker is like a pedometer / game, little like handheld analog looking like game device where you can earn experience and like gain items and stuff like in real life that transfer into the game.
Like a Tamagotchi, maybe.
Yeah. So like, and you can do, and it counts your steps too, and all that. Like, I think if you get X amount of steps, you're allowed to get so many experience. You can go up so many levels, and then when you turn your game on, it connects through infrared to the game, and it like transfers. It's kind of an interesting idea. My guess is it was probably a way to get you like to still want to play the game, but also to like encourage people like, oh, this is physical work too, or whatever. I don't really know. I didn't know it was a thing, but the reason I wanted to ask you about it is because I know you love Pokemon, and I
Yes.
thought there was a chance you had it, but I really wanted to talk about it because I learned something about it that's crazy. It is the most accurate pedometer. Okay, and I say that because I literally read an article titled, "Did you know the Pokewalker is the most accurate pedometer ever made?" And I was like, no way. What? No way. Because it was like, it was like, from what I read, the MSRP was like $40 and it came bundled with the game.
Yes.
So games were usually like $35, I think. So
Yeah.
it was basically a $5 thing.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a toy. It's a game for a game. No one who is buying it for a pedometer no one's doing that.
Yes, the fitness community was buying Wii Fit at that point. They weren't buying
That's
Pokewalker.
right. This is like way before your phone could track your steps and you could get Fitbits and all that, right? It wasn't the thing that it is now.
Right, like in gym class in high school, well, not even high school, but like in grade school as well, we had like a device that was just a pedometer.
Yeah, that's what so that's what people would buy at the time. Like, it's a step counter, all it does. And if you like stomped your leg and put it on your pants, it would count your steps. Like that's all it did. Well, it turns out that it was the most accurate one ever. And I say that with an asterisk because as I looked into it, it turns out what they mean by that is the University of Iowa did a study on most accurate pedometers of the time. For some, like, I don't know why, number one, they did that study, and number two, why that one was in the study. But I did find out that it happened to be the most accurate one available in 2013 as pitted up against 2 other models.
Oh, 2 others?
2 other ones. So, and it said it was the most accurate when normal walking, but it was like if you were running, they were all inaccurate or something. So it was like a ridiculous study. The article was just grabbing my attention. I don't know why I read it. I didn't realize until after I read it that it was from 10 years ago, but I still just thought, what a fascinating thing that, number one, Pokemon made a pedometer, and number two, that it happened to be like an actual good pedometer.
Welcome to the Factoid Podcast. You didn't ask for it, but we're going to tell you about it anyways. I'm Payton Gessel.
And I'm Chris Humphreys.
I've been thinking lately about what counts as a cyborg. There's no official definition that everyone agrees upon, so I thought it would be a fun game for us to play and just kind of find out for ourselves where we think the line is between human and cyborg. So I have a list of augmentations here, and I want you to tell me if having one of these would make you a cyborg or not. Let's start with glasses.
No.
What if I glue them to my face?
That's just silly. So no.
Okay, still no.
No.
How about braces then? Those are in your body for a few years.
No.
Okay. How about a hip replacement?
No. Again, I wouldn't consider that. No.
Okay, why not? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just curious.
In my mind, robot is more about technology, and we're still talking about like an analog thing in your body. You know what I'm saying? Like,
okay.
This is an analog piece of metal or something that's in my leg.
Okay. No.
Metal is, I don't know if they'd use metal anymore, but
yeah, no, they do. And I found out about a recall that happened on some hip replacements, which I don't know how you go about a recall. I don't know if it's like if it's in the body.
You got to get a new one.
Well, right,
Because
exactly.
it's a big deal.
And the recall was because they were failing too quickly. So, like, I don't know what you do. I don't know if it's just you write it out if you've got it in you. But
imagine being that person who's like, darn old boy got a recall. I got to go back in. Like, that's ridiculous.
I know. Because I think like they only have to last like most people aren't getting hip replacements when they're 10. So
Right.
like they only need to last like a few decades usually.
Right.
But yeah, I would not want to have to deal with that.
No.
Yes. So next item on the list, a pacemaker.
See, this is now we're getting it. See, I've never thought about the line before.
Yeah.
And I would have never considered that someone to be, but there is a piece of them that is like, I am being kept. Is a pacemaker just a monitoring device, or because I know sometimes you can get ones that like also can like shock you and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know the difference. I assumed when someone talks about a pacemaker that it is correcting. It is administering a small shock to reset.
I would say if that's the case, if I'm using the line that I'm making up in my head right now that I've never really thought through, we're probably getting there.
Okay,
we're getting close.
Yeah. Now my last one on the list, finger magnets.
Finger magnets?
Yeah.
What's a finger magnet?
People get their fingers cut open so they can stick little magnets in the pads of their fingers.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. And as
like, could I open the fridge just by putting my hand on it and pulling?
They would not be that strong.
Okay.
They don't want to risk additional
hurting
damage.
Your skin and stuff.
Yes. So, like, as you can imagine, doctors don't want to perform.
Well, it seems sort of not that even useful.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that. Yeah, but like because like doctors, like it goes against the Hippocratic Oath, you can't really get a doctor to do it. And sometimes the people will try to have like a tattoo artist or like a body piercer do it because they have similar tools, and a lot of those guys don't either. They don't want to do it.
Because I know like in the piercing world, like you can get like implants or whatever, which is like metal under your skin, kind of.
Yes.
And it like will be like I don't know if it's metal, I guess, but it's like a structure that like you can see from the outside. So that seems like something you might be able to convince a piercer
body
to
piercer,
do.
maybe?
Yeah, body piercer.
Yes. The challenge with those guys though is that they're usually, I don't think they're allowed to give you like true anesthetics.
Sure.
I think they can put like a local numbing agent.
And they don't want you like you're cutting your fingers open.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it is legally considered assault if they use a scalpel, so you would have to like promise you're not going to try to charge them with a crime. So yeah, but like it's as we're saying, like I don't know, like maybe if it's worth it or not, but like after they stitch you up, they turn on a microwave nearby, and you just feel your finger begins to slowly buzz in like a rhythmic pattern, and you've developed a new sense that most people in the world have never felt. Welcome to the world of grindhouse wetware. Yeah,
what?
So if computers are considered hardware and apps are considered software, humans are considered wetware.
Is that a real term? I've never. That's fascinating.
And Grindhouse Wetware is a real company.
No way.
They are a collective of biohackers that are based out of Pittsburgh. And the crazy part here is these guys aren't new. I discovered them a decade ago.
No.
I've been following them since I was in college. And like their goal is to like experiment on their bodies by implanting technology to try to advance humanity forward. And they've made a few different products over the years, and they've inspired a bunch of sub-communities around the world who were like into similar kind of things. And conveniently enough, I took a trip to Pittsburgh for Amy and I's anniversary a few weeks ago, and I thought I would do some boots on the ground journalism and see what the deal with them is, and like check in on the current state of biohacking. So the short answer is these guys have pretty much fizzled out. Yeah, like they still exist, but like I really tried to have an open mind and like understand the appeal of these things, and I have gathered some other people's thoughts on why this might be worth doing and why you might want to get finger magnets specifically. So some people post videos of them using their magnets to attract small objects like paper clips or a bottle cap.
I was picturing the convenience of like if you're working with very tiny screws,
Yes.
you don't need to get a bowl. You can just put them on your finger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I get that.
Yes, like a magnetized screwdriver, but more
Yes.
convenient depending on who you are.
You just put your finger in it, and there it is.
Right, and it's not strong enough that it's going to damage any
Right.
sort of like devices.
Right.
It's but just enough to to hold your screws like that. A lot of modern laptops have like a small magnet in them that tells the screen that the lid is shut, and then it turns the screen off. So I found some biohackers who will just like tap their laptop in a certain spot, and it like auto turns their screen off.
It's kind of cool.
As like a little privacy thing, which kind of makes me wonder though, like why, what do you have to hide? Like what is so important that you have to hide that you need to like tap your screen to turn it off quick? You can just like shut it.
Right, like you care enough to like have your body manipulated in order to do that.
Yes, exactly. So I think the most practical use I was able to find is that if you were doing electrical work, you can hover your hand over top of a wire and tell if it's live and tell which type of current it is.
Is that based off of like vibration?
Yes. So the magnet vibrates very slightly in your skin, and it basically like the way it rubs it in a very small vibrating kind of pattern that you are able to tell like intensity based on distance and proximity, and I think AC versus DC possibly.
When you put it that way, I could see like an incredibly dedicated electrician doing that, being like, this just makes my job easier. I get it. I get that. Interesting. Yeah. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that's how that even worked. That's interesting.
Yeah. So beyond magnets, though, Grindhouse Wetware has, they started showing off several different prototypes between about like 2012 and 2016 that they hoped would take the world by storm. They demoed this device called the Circadia that sends biometric data to your phone from underneath your skin. And they also created a device called the North Star, which is like a ring of LED lights that you put on the back of your hand. And it also will help sense magnetic north. Like if your hand is facing north. That's why that's called.
So it's like a built-in light compass.
Yes, light compass. That's exactly.
It seems like an unnecessary way to have a compass, personally, if I think about that. But
sure,
it does seem cool.
Yes. So
cool.
Outside of a few test installs, though, nothing really ever got released as to the masses, and they kind of went quiet for the most part. Grindhousewetware.com now redirects to a Facebook page that mostly just posts like memes about Elon Musk. And when I was in a smoothie shop in Pittsburgh, I asked the guy making my smoothie if he knew about Grindhouse Wetware. And he was around our age, and he says, like, oh, wow, that took me down a trip down memory lane because it was such a big deal at the time, and he had not heard anyone even talk about these guys in years. So, like, why did they not become the next big thing in tech? Why don't we know the names of them like we do all of our, popular tech giants these days? Two theories. I think phones and watches kind of made them obsolete, as you can imagine. Biometric data under your skin, or just biometric data on your watch that you can take off.
Everybody can get it.
You can shower with your watch
exactly.
now. Yeah.
Less invasive. You don't gotta get cut open.
Exactly.
In a sketchy way.
Yeah, like compasses for like phones work pretty good at this stuff. Yeah, like in 2024 that like there aren't a lot of additional needs that the biohacking can solve that less invasive devices can't.
Right.
Some more modern biohacking technology that's been more popular in recent years is RFID and NFC implants.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard of that.
Yes, and they're a lot smaller. You can like get one that will work with like a body piercing gun thing. Like it's like a standard instead of like I got to cut you with a scalpel. Right. It's like I use this tool. There's not that much blood or pain by comparison. But like they also have some issues too. I watched a really cringy video of this lady who cloned her like Disney wristband magic device thing. So she walks up to the gate and she's trying to explain that like, oh no, I've got it in here. And she like puts her hand on the little pass and it scans and it opens the gate. And she says to the worker, you just witnessed the first cyborg to ever enter Disney World.
That is funny.
And like the employee could not have cared less in that
That's
moment.
so funny. I've heard people who do it with I know people have done it with like their Tesla key.
Oh yeah.
And so, because you don't need a key, you use your phone, but like say you don't have that, there is like a physical card and they'll just get that in their wrist or whatever and boom, you can tap the door and it opens.
Right.
Which again, I mean, there is some flair to that, right?
Yes.
I don't think I'd do it, but there's some flair to that.
Right. I read a cautionary tale about a guy who kind of proved that maybe this route isn't the best way to go. And I'm mostly telling you this story because I want to say the guy's name, which is Meow Ludo Disco Gamma Meow Meow. Not his given name. He changed his name. But yeah, Meow Ludo Disco Gamma Meow Meow is an Australian man who implanted his train pass into his hand. So I think it was a separate RFID and an NFC. I think one of them like was tracking the location data of like I scanned at this station, and then I think the other one was tracking like total balance on his card. And then like so like a lot of these like metro train kind of stations that you just tap your card, it opens the gate, and that way it knows like to auto pull money from your account and, and stuff. So of all places, he was on his way to a cyborg convention, and like the Australian government caught word of what he was doing, and they said, well, this just violates our terms of use, and they remotely deactivated
Oh
it.
no.
So I don't know. He may have been able to like wipe and reclone the card, like
Sure.
it to do something else, but like it really just shows that like the futility of trying to do this and how very quickly your cool thing can be taken away from you.
Well, think about like almost every card these days. You can do the tap thing, right?
Yeah.
You can tap it on. There's occasionally you get to that one Chipotle that you tap 3 times and it doesn't work, and they say swipe, and it's like, well, how you swipe your how you swipe your wrist? You know what I mean?
Very carefully.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I also think that Grindhouse Wetware didn't really work because they really struggled to find a specific purpose. They wanted to keep it kind of broad, and I think that the goal was to try to keep it inclusive. But like they didn't have a point to be like, and our goal is to get to here. They just kind of said like, we're gonna do stuff, and who knows what'll happen. And it's hard to like meet a goal like when you can't really like solve a problem if you don't know what you're trying to solve very easily. And like after I kind of realized this, I was checking in on Grindhouse Wetware. I assumed nothing big had happened in the last 10 years, but like you never know.
Yeah.
But like when I'm reading all this and seeing how it's it's turning into a bit of a ghost town online, I was getting a little bit bummed out. I thought like, oh, I was hoping there would be something cool here. And that's when I found a biohacker right under my nose. Not literally my nose, but like around. And just like Grindhouse Wetware, he has access to a grassroots community that sometimes gets pushed back from medical professionals. But his biohacking is very practical, and it makes his quality of life better. My friend Evan is a looper with an open source pancreas. He has diabetes, if that wasn't clear.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and it is not like an implanted organ, like artificial pancreas. I am talking more about the hardware and software that he uses for that. But I have 3 friends, though. It's not just Evan. I have 3 friends who are all friends with each other, which is very convenient. And they all have type 1 diabetes. And when I hang out with Kenton, Eric, or Evan, I learn a lot about diabetes just from hanging around them. And, I'm sure you're aware of the basics of diabetes, but here's just a quick summary. Your body needs a hormone called insulin, and that breaks down the glucose in your blood into usable energy. The body of a type 1 diabetic attacks the cells that create insulin, so you need a different way to get the insulin into the body. And since your body isn't regulating your blood sugar levels on its own, you need to check your blood sugar and keep it as consistent as possible. Not too high, not too low. And you do that with a device that's called a continuous glucose monitor, or a CGM, and that identifies your blood sugar level. And then you have another device called the insulin pump, and that connects to your body, and it delivers insulin into the body to help balance out your levels. So Evan told me that when diabetics would go to the endocrinologist back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean even just like a few years ago in the past decade or so, like the doctor, they would look at the readings on the CGM, and they would look at the readings on your pump, and then they would adjust some settings and say like, all right, I think I've tweaked some things here and we should be good to go. But like the diabetes community got really mad about this because they would say, well, why can't the monitor just talk to the pump? And just like, why do, like, not against the professional helping out here, but like these are just 2 tech devices. Why can't the CGM just talk to the pump, and instead of me going to my doctor's visit and trying to optimize it that way? And like there are a lot of weird just like tech issues that could easily be solved. Like you'll have one device that connects to your phone over Bluetooth. Great. But then your other one, it will connect over RF or something. Or you'll have these 2 devices, maybe they both connect to Bluetooth, but they like you need to have a separate device. So like Kenton, he has to carry around his normal phone, and then he has to have a phone that like it's like a lockdown Android phone that like just manages one thing. And like so he has to just like carry 2 phones around. Like why can't you just have an app on his normal phone and just have one? And this is one of the things I really like about open source communities, because
Yes.
they are great because they can iterate fast, much faster than like a larger company that has a legal department who is mostly afraid of being sued, and they have to take things very slowly. So like diabetics and people with diabetic family members kind of got tired of seeing the technology just in general increase, but the technology that controlled a big facet of their lives just struggled to catch up. And during an event at Stanford in 2013, the We Are Not Waiting movement began. The community that started with some like tech-savvy suburban dads quickly realized that making the CGM and the insulin pump talk to each other was just a few lines of code away. And there was also just plenty of data that the CGM was tracking, but it was kind of like a black box situation where it wasn't being transferred out anywhere. So they had tons of data that was being collected that they didn't even realize before that they could have access to. So they took all this data and connected everything, wrote some more code, and they built a universal app that controls everything together. And this starts to catch on, and it started forcing the healthcare companies to innovate. So like not only are the open source apps helping to like improve the lives of enthusiasts, but it's also raising the bar for everyone else involved, because the healthcare companies are being forced to innovate to keep up. So Evan specifically pays for an Apple developer account that lets him run unofficial, unsigned apps on his phone, and he downloads a bunch of files off a GitHub repo, and he compiles the looping app, and he adds it into his phone. And he showed this to me in action, and it's like a really slick interface and front end for viewing metrics, but it also has a ton of functionality too. And I think we all understand the idea of like flattening the curve with COVID, of the idea of like trying to get, the levels a little bit more flatter and stuff. But like these apps are doing something very similar to that, but with your blood sugar levels. And there are two different types of insulin doses. There's one that's called a bolus dose, and the idea is you take that one right before you eat a meal. And it's like a large dose that's supposed to counteract, kind of like help you with the meal you're about to eat. But then there's another type of dose that's called a basal, BASAL, and that one is more of like a small drip feed throughout the day. And these looping apps are very great at being able to control like a basal dose, because it is reading your current blood sugar level, and it is making very small micro adjustments and kind of like adjusting up and down, like, and giving you insulin every couple of minutes in order just to keep you at that smooth, consistent level, so that you're like, you don't even have to think about, am I too high? Am I too low? You kind of become more of like a manager instead of being like an active participant. And
You
like,
just make sure it's being taken care of properly.
exactly. And like the great thing about that is that being like, diabetics don't have to think about diabetes all the time. You still kind of have to. It's not like you just are going to forget that you're diabetic, but it ends up, it's not the thing you have to talk about at the dinner table all the time. It's not the constant worry in the back of your mind, and you're able to focus your energy and time more on just living your life instead of being worried about your blood sugar as much. So a month ago, I guess I wanted to catch a glimpse of what humanity might look like in our future with rapid advancements in technology. And I was pretty underwhelmed by our finger magnet guys at Grindhouse Wetware, but maybe I was just looking in the wrong places. I think my diabetic friends are the real biohacking cyborgs.
Payton, have you ever butchered an animal before?
I have dissected a frog in middle school.
Okay.
That is the closest I've ever gotten.
I think I did a pig in middle, not a pig, but like a fetal pig.
Yeah.
And then I did a frog in high school, I think. But I also had the opportunity a few years ago with my friend named Danny. I've talked about him on here before. They had ducks, and he let me come over. I asked if I could, and we butchered the ducks and ate them for dinner.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so that was like a really interesting experience. I've always kind of been intrigued by like butchers and like meat processing, and so I've been around like when people process deer, and like I've watched that kind of stuff. I think it's interesting. I never had the opportunity to do it until that day, so that was pretty interesting. I've never got to butcher chickens, but I've always been interested in it. One of my friends, good friends from Colorado, he had a job just in the his job was just to kill chickens at a slaughterhouse that processed chickens, right? And I was like, that seems. He told me that. I thought he was joking. He's like, no, I'm not joking.
Here's my business card.
Yeah, I just killed chickens. Like, that's what a terrible job. Yeah. So like literally, he just killed chickens, and I remember like as a kid, I asked my grandpa. He was talking to me about how they used to have chickens, and he didn't have them at the time. And I said, well, how do you do that? How's that work? And so he's like, well, you have to kill them. And I was like, okay, how do you kill him? And I'm expecting like, oh, you shoot him, right? Whatever, because I'm a kid, I don't know.
Right.
He's like, well, some people grab him by their head and then just swing him in a circle like a sling over their head, like, like David and Goliath
Oh my
type stuff until
gosh.
their body flies off. And I was like, are you joking? He's like, no, that's some people do that. I was like, was that what you did? He's like, well, no, I've done it that way, but all I did was I just grab them and put their head on a tree stump and then kind of just stomp on it. I was like, okay, that makes sense. I understand this is seeming violent, right?
Sure.
But I eat meat, and I've come to understand that like animals gotta die if I want to eat meat. So I understand it seems violent, but I guess it's not for everyone. Some people are vegetarians, but I'm always kind of interested in that.
Yeah, I recently learned that my dad's computer desk was from, I think it was from like my mom's old family farm when she was growing up, and the computer desk was like the place where they cut the heads off the chickens.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, I had no idea until recently.
Well, and I know you got like the head's got to come off. That's an important part. And I learned this with Danny with the ducks. He had this thing called the kill cone. Okay, and it's basically like a traffic cone that's like on a sawhorses upside down, and it's like cut off so the hole's bigger. And you just it was ducks. You just put the duck in upside down and pull his head out the hole and just cut the head off. And it honestly actually was like human. It was like more because everything just drips below, and it's just it's a lot. They can't fly around and flap around. It was interesting. I've always been kind of interested in that, and studying for this factoid this week. That story came to mind. But that's not the only story that came to mind. So let's switch gears. Second story that I thought of was when when Kirsten and I were on our honeymoon, we went to Tennessee. We went to Pigeon Forge, and we were in the mountains of Tennessee. It's a beautiful place. I don't know if you've ever been, but
I have not. I feel like I'm the only person in America, or at least in the Midwest, who has not.
I feel like it's definitely like a Midwest vacation location.
Oh yeah,
because it's not just that, but a lot of Midwest folks go there because it's like a really cool place and it's not that far. But yeah, it is. It's really beautiful. That's where we went for our honeymoon, stayed in a cabin. And one of the things we did on that trip that I thought was one of the most fun things we did was we got to go tubing down a river. And I'm not talking like tubing behind a boat. It was like you get in an inflatable tube and you just like float down a river, kind of like a lazy river, but like real, right?
Right.
And it was super fun. And there's a whole story. We got sunburnt like crazy because we didn't have any sunscreen. And I thought like, oh, we're not going to be in the sun. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out you still get sunburnt when you're on the river for 4 hours, even if it's mostly in the shade, right?
Yeah.
But that day, I remember being in the middle of it was like a 3 or 4 hour float it took you to get from one side to the other. And in the middle of that, there was like a portion where like the river kind of widened off to the side. If you got off your tube, there was like a rock and a tree that hung over with like a rope tied to it. And you could like jump and grab the rope and like swing into the river. It's like a swimming hole.
Sure.
Super fun. So we kind of sat there and watched for a while. It's pretty fun. I'm not really the kind of person. I'm not the best swimmer I know. I won't die if I fall off the tube, but like I'm not gonna, I'm not a great swimmer. I don't like to dive or jump from high places, but I did like to watch, and so I just thought that was kind of cool. Those came to mind as I was thinking about the factoid that I learned about for this week. Basically, so if you mix together beheading poultry with swinging on ropes in the river, you will eventually arrive at today's topic. Today we're talking about the main event. To be fair, I don't actually think it's the main event, but it is an event that takes place at the San Antolin Festival in Spain. This happens in a portion of Spain that is native to the Basque people.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and and what we're going to be talking about today happens on the specific day called the Day of the Geese.
Yeah, the Basque people are really interesting because, at least for me, because of their language. Where they are because they're very isolated. They're like, the people are surrounded by mountains, I think, maybe in northern Spain. And their language did not really mix with anybody's well. So they kind of have this like isolated dialect and way of speaking that doesn't match with anybody.
Yes.
So they get brought up on like a lot of YouTube videos I watch about being like these very special, unique people.
I didn't know anything about them, but I learned that they're considered one of the oldest like populations in Europe. They're can be traced back to like 70 BC or something.
Right,
like
and it's no one can get to them.
Exactly, right. So it's kind of a rare place, but they have this, and their culture is like very important to them, right? Because it's again, they're different than everybody else, and there's like I want to say there's like maybe 1 million people now, roughly something like that.
Sounds right.
But they have this festival, and it happens in all of Spain, but specifically, I think it was started with the Basque people, and it was kind of got more popular when like the Catholic Church sent missionaries there, and they've named all these events after like saints and whatnot, and so they do this festival called the San Antolin Festival. I think is how you pronounce it. It happens in that area. something about the Basque people is they're like sort of, because it's like such an old culture, right? Like they're like supposedly considered like closely related to like the cavemen type thing,
Yes.
right? And so they care a lot about like culturally, they care a lot about like strength and like manly, like I start fire, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And so like this whole event is basically like, and it's been going on, like I said, for a very long time. It's basically just like strength stuff, right? Like cutting down trees or lifting huge rocks, like Olympic style, like I'm going to be manly type of things.
Sure. Sounds kind of like the Scottish Highlander Games or something like that, where it's, yes, feats of pure strength for competition and
exactly.
sport.
And like they're very competitive people. And so they do stuff like that every single year. But on September the 5th, they celebrate what is called the Day of the Geese. And this day has many different, from what I understand, many different games and events that go along with it having to do with geese. But there's one specific one that I found out about that was just so over the top, I couldn't believe it was a real thing, but it is. During this part of the competition, there is one event that has made its way all the way through their history. It's celebrated in all of Spain for quite some time. Spain does not do this anymore. This is just basically the Basque people, and people are it's kind of controversial even among them, but they do it because this is their culture and they're going to hold on to this. But it's relatively controversial still to this day. I think I said it was the 5th of September. It's the 15th of September I'm now seeing, so that's a fix there. But
okay.
The 15th of September, this is the Day of the Geese. It takes place in the Basque town of La Caitillo, which is in that portion of Spain. And it's like on a bay. And in this bay, this is what happens during the part of the competition. They suspend the carcass of a goose over the town harbor. It's on a rope. It's kind of on like a pulley system sort of thing. And people actually stand up near that pulley system up at the top, and boats will go by, and these boats are actually called chalupas, and they'll fill these boats up with people. Like I'm talking like it's almost like picture like a really long like canoe type thing, but with like dozens of people on it. These are people who are like they're ready to compete, right? And how you compete is you jump off the boat and you grab the goose, and the goose that's on the rope, and you have to the goal. To win, in order to win, you jump off the chalupa, you grab the goose carcass, and the people who are up on the landing have the ability to pull and to let the slack out. So they're basically like dunking you over and over again, trying to get you to fall off this goose, not be able to do the goal. Which guess what the goal is? To behead the goose.
Wow!
That's how you win.
So Team A, the chalupas in the boat.
Correct.
Team B, the pulley people.
Correct. Correct.
But are they trying to like, carrot on a stick, like pull it away before you can
Pretty
jump?
much. Anything and everything you can do. They're trying to get you to miss it. They're trying to dunk you so you fall off. They're trying to confuse you. Their job is to get you to not touch it. And then these people, the boat below, the chalupa, they just go back and forth. Boom, boom, boom. And one guy jumps, he misses. One guy jumps. So they just go back and forth. They keep jumping off the next person to jump. I did learn for some reason, it used to only be open to the Basque people, but now it's a thing that anyone can just go do, providing you're less than 75 kilograms. I'm not sure why that's a rule exactly. Maybe it's structural support. That's like what is that? 180 pounds?
It's 165.
Okay,
I need to drop 20 pounds fast.
I'm gonna have to do it too. And so this is like a thing that almost seems like what is possibly going on. And to be honest, I couldn't even find out why they do this, but I stumbled upon, once again, a random YouTube short of somebody jumping and grabbing what I didn't even know what it was. And so I kind of like did some exploring, turns out that's a goose.
I wouldn't say I'm into senseless violence against animals. I feel like they're, it's not something that I would say I enjoy. If there was one animal I had to make an exception for, it would be the goose.
Yeah, them things are mean sometimes.
Yes, the amount of times I'm in a parking lot or I'm trying to drive somewhere and a goose just stands defiant, chases you down for being too close to it.
Yeah.
I recently read an article, it was a local article about a seminar for people in Columbus, business owners who were struggling with geese, and it was like, here is how to deal with geese in a friendly way. And so, yeah, I think I can make an exception here and maybe just relish in the fact of humanity reminding geese where they belong.
That's right. Like, you guys, you deserve this. I even forgot to tell you about one of the most interesting parts of this.
Oh, wait,
if you thought
more?
it was hard already, there's one more piece. This goose is covered in grease. covered in grease. So, like, not only are there people pulling it away from you, and if you do get to grab onto it, dunking you over and over again, but it's also very hard to hold on to. And I will say, like you said, we're not into necessarily senseless violence against animals. Up until like I want to say like the late 90s, they used the live goose for this. Yeah, so there was people who were pretty mad about that,
Sure.
rightfully so, I think, because again, it's a living thing. They did switch it, and I do believe now they even have like a rubber goose, and you can like choose which one you'd rather grab.
It's like a rubber chicken. It makes like the really annoying like
yeah, like that. But yeah, so like this is something they do every year on this day. It's a celebration, and they just go by and they do it over and over again. And the goal is to pull the head off, and the person who detaches the head from the goose is the winner, and they win just as you would think. The carcass of the goose. Now, I did learn there is something that happens if there is any debate over who won. And my question after reading about that is, how could there possibly be any debate for who pulled the head off the goose? But it said if there's any confusion or any debate going on in this, there's only one way to settle it, and that's by rowing around the perimeter of the harbor. And it's like, guys, you can tell who ripped the head off the goose. Yes. But again, it's just the competitive nature of these guys. They sound like a blast to be around if you're in the right mindset. You know what I mean? So anyway, I couldn't believe this happened. I can't believe it. Kind of reminded me. It's in the same vein in my head as like the cheese rolling down the hill. It's like people are just jumping out of a boat trying to. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
It sounds like a blast though. And for those of you guys out there who are continuing to make a list of the things that Factoid has recommended to you to do, go ahead and right after train a crow and visit the real London Bridge in Arizona, write down decapitated greasy goose in Spain.
Thank you for listening to the Factoid Podcast. I'm super excited to say that like we've been doing this for a year, Chris.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hard to believe, really.
Yeah, and I was going to say that we couldn't do it without our listeners, but we kind of can, and we did for a long time. Like we were basically doing an unofficial version of this for, I don't know, how long have we known each other? Like 7 years?
Yeah.
Except it was just like me hanging out at your house or like, and just talking like this. So while we appreciate you, all of you listeners out there, that we're glad that you're listening, but we have been doing this for a while, and we're glad that we can invite you in to join.
Yeah,
us.
and I think that the fear with something like this is always that like it'll fizzle out, it won't be fun anymore, it'll be too much work, it'll be too hard, and it's like never have I gotten to the point in a year now where it's like I don't want to do that. I just think it's fun.
Right.
So
exactly.
I'm glad that we get to do it. So thanks for listening, and thanks for doing it with us.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks all around. I also thought this would be a great time to announce that we are doing another listener episode. We're coming up on episode 30, so in a couple of episodes here. And that'll be coming out on Tax Day, April 15th. Hopefully we can make your tax day slightly better.
And that is an episode we cannot do without you.
Yes. Yeah, I was nagging the audience earlier, but no, we really do need you for this episode. So yeah, send us any of your tax-related questions, but really send us just anything that you would like us to research and tell you more about. Bonus points if it's kind of weird. And so just send that to what'syours@factoidpodcast.com. And yeah, we will look into it, and we will give you hopefully a satisfying answer to your questions. Chris, one thing that we had talked about recently that I thought would be maybe a fun little challenge is like, wouldn't it be funny if we could get one person to become a fan of this podcast that does not know either of us in person?
Yes, it would.
It would be very satisfying. So I think we should try to make it happen, and maybe just leave a 5-star review if you've enjoyed listening to us so far, and hopefully that helps our algorithm, and maybe we will pop up into someone's recommended feed. And if you are that listener, please message us. That would be really cool.
Yes, it would. You can find this podcast everywhere that you get your podcasts or on our website, factoidpodcast.com.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.